Before the betrayal, before the pit, before the prison and the palace, there was a coat. It was the coat of favor, the color of a father's deep and open love, and the color of hatred that would one day sell a brother for silver. Joseph was the son of Jacob's old age, the firstborn of Rachel, the woman Jacob had loved with a fierce and lasting love. While his brothers labored in the fields under the hard sun, Joseph remained near to his father. Jacob made him a coat of many colors, a robe that caught the light whenever he moved and marked him publicly as the favored one. Yet every time the brothers saw those colors, something dark and quiet settled deep within their hearts. Then the dreams came. Joseph dreamed they were binding sheaves in the field. His sheaf rose and stood upright, while the sheaves gathered around it and bowed low. He dreamed again. The sun, the moon, the 11 stars bowed down before him. When he spoke the dreams aloud, the air between them thickened with hatred. Even Jacob had rebuked him, and Joseph kept the words in his mind and turned them over in silence. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to find his brothers near Dothan. They saw him coming from a distance, the coat bright against the land, and something in them broke open. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We will say a fierce animal has devoured him. Then we will see what becomes of his dreams." Reuben heard the murder in their voices and intervened. "Let us not take his life," he said. "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him." He meant to return later and restore him to their father. And the brothers listened, and they stripped the coat from Joseph's shoulders and cast him down into the dry cistern. And after that deed was done, they sat down and they ate. Joseph laid at the bottom of the pit, the sky a small, unreachable circle far above him. He called for them. He waited for the sound of their voices returning with mercy. None came. Only silence and the slow, terrible realization that his brothers had left them there to die. When an Ishmaelite caravan passed on its way to Egypt, Judah spoke. "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites." So they drew Joseph up from the pit and sold him for 20 shekels of silver. The coat of many colors they kept, and they slaughtered a goat, and they dipped the robe in its blood, and they carried it home to their father. Jacob recognized it at once, and he tore his garments, and he wept with a grief that would not be comforted. "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Joseph was taken down to Egypt in chains. The land of his childhood disappeared behind him. In the house of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the Lord was with him. Everything that Joseph touched prospered, and Potiphar placed him over all that he had owned. And for a time, it seemed that the worst might be over. Trust and responsibility had returned to him. Then Potiphar's wife looked at Joseph with lustful desire. Day after day she spoke to him. Day after day he refused her. "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Joseph said. Then one day, when none of the men of the house were inside, she caught him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." He fled, leaving the garment in her hand. Her accusation against him was swift and cruel. She called the man of the household and told him that the Hebrew slave had come to mock her and tried to force himself upon her. When she cried out, she said, "He fled, leaving his garment behind as proof." When Potiphar heard this story, his anger burned hot against Joseph, and he took Joseph and he threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were confined. The darkness closed around Joseph again. Yet even there, the Lord was with him. The keeper of the prison placed the other prisoners under Joseph's care. Time had passed slowly, and Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and his chief baker offended their lord and were committed to the same prison as Joseph. Both dreamed on the same night, and in the morning their faces were troubled, and Joseph asked them why. When they told him there was no one to interpret, he answered, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." The cupbearer spoke. In his dream, a vine stood before him with 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms came out, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in his hand, and he took the grapes, pressed them into a deep cup, and placed them in Pharaoh's palm. Joseph listened, and he said, "The 3 branches are 3 days, and in 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. You will place Pharaoh's cup in his hands as you did when you were his cupbearer." Then, with quiet desperation, he added, "Only remember me when it is well with you. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into this pit." When the baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he gathered courage and told his own dream. He had 3 cake baskets on his head, and the uppermost basket were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on his head. Joseph, his face grew solemn. "The 3 baskets are 3 days, and in 3 days Pharaoh will lift you up from your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you." 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, it happened exactly as Joseph had said. The cupbearer was restored to his place, and the baker was hanged on a tree. And the request of Joseph to the cupbearer was forgotten. 2 full years had passed in that prison. Joseph waited in silence of being forgotten. The days stretched long. The hope that had briefly risen when he interpreted the dream slowly settled back into the dust of the dungeon floor. Then Pharaoh dreamed. He stood by the Nile, and 7 cows, sleek and plump, came up out of the river and fed in the reed grass. After them, 7 other cows came up, ugly and gaunt, and stood beside them on the bank. Then the thin cows ate the sleek cows, yet remained as thin as before. And Pharaoh awoke, and he slept again, and he dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, plump and good, grew on one stalk. After them, 7 thin ears, blighted by the east wind, sprouted and swallowed the plump ears. In the morning, his spirit was troubled. He called for all the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt, but none could interpret his dreams. Then the cupbearer, he remembered the promise to Joseph. His voice shook as he confessed his failure and spoke of the Hebrew servant in the prison that had interpreted dreams with perfect accuracy. Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once. They brought him quickly out of the dungeon. They shaved him, they changed his clothes, and he stood before the most powerful man in all of the world. Pharaoh said, "I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said that you, when you hear of a dream, can interpret it." Joseph answered, "It is not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." So he listened as Pharaoh recounted both dreams, and Joseph spoke with a clarity that came from beyond himself. The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows in 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The 7 thin and ugly cows, that came out after are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume all the land. The doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the things you have seen are fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Then Joseph offered counsel that the Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land to gather a fifth of the produce during the years of plenty and store it under guard against the years of famine. Pharaoh looked at his servants and said, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" And he turned to Joseph. "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and as wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regard to the throne will I be greater than you." He took the signet ring from his hand and he placed it on Joseph's hand. He clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in a second chariot, and they cried before him, "Bow the knee." Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh and began to govern the land of Egypt. The years of plenty came, and Joseph stored grain like the sand of the sea, so much that he stopped measuring it. Then the famine arrived, severe and unrelenting. It spread beyond Egypt until the whole earth had felt its weight. In Canaan, Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, and he sent 10 of his sons down to buy food. And he kept Benjamin, Rachel's only remaining son, close beside him. The brothers came, and they bowed their faces to the ground before the governor of the land. Joseph recognized them at once, but his brothers, they did not know him. He spoke roughly with them through an interpreter, accused them of being spies, and listened as they spoke of their father and their younger brother still at home. He heard the old guilt rise in their voices, and they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the distress of his soul, and he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." Reuben reminded them of his warning, and as the brothers talked, Joseph turned away from them, and he wept when they could not see him. Joseph, he gathered himself, and he tested them. He bound Simeon before their eyes and demanded they bring Benjamin if they ever wished to see his face again. When at last they returned with the boy, Joseph saw his mother's son and felt his heart constrict so tightly he could barely speak. In joy, he prepared a feast and seated them according to their birth order, and they ate. Then he tested them once more, secretly placing his silver cup in Benjamin's sack and sending his steward to overtake them on the road when they left. When the cup was found, the brothers tore their clothes, and they returned to the city in their despair. Judah stepped forward. He spoke at length, his voice heavy with years of sorrow and responsibility. He told of their father's grief, of the love Jacob bore for the 2 sons of Rachel, and how the loss of Benjamin would bring the old man down to Sheol in sorrow. Then Judah offered himself in the boy's place. "Let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back to his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father." Joseph could no longer contain himself, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and the house of Pharaoh heard him. Then he said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" Terror held them silent. They could not answer him. He said again more gently, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. It was not you who sent me here, but it was God." And he fell upon Benjamin's neck, and he wept. He kissed all his brothers, and he wept upon them. Only then were they able to speak to him. When Pharaoh heard that Joseph's brothers had come, he was pleased, and he sent wagons and provisions to bring Jacob and his entire family to Egypt. In Canaan, the brothers told their father, "Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt." Jacob's heart had went numb. The words were too large to receive. Then he saw the wagons Joseph had sent, and his spirit had been revived. "It is enough," he said. "Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." They came down to Egypt, and Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet his father in Goshen. When he saw him, he fell on his neck and he wept a long while. Jacob, frail and full of years, held his son he had thought was dead, and he said, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Joseph settled them in the best of the land and managed the remaining years of famine with wisdom, so that many people were kept alive. When Jacob's time drew near, he called for Joseph and made him swear to carry his bones out of Egypt and bury him with his fathers. Then he blessed Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and afterward he blessed all his sons with words that stretched far beyond into the future. And when he finished, he drew up his feet into his bed and he breathed his last. And Joseph fell upon his father's face, and he wept over him, and he kissed him. Then they carried Jacob home to Canaan with great mourning and buried him in the cave of the field in Machpelah. After their father's death, the brothers grew afraid. They thought Joseph might at last repay them for the evil that they had done. And they came and they fell before him, saying, "Behold, we are your servants." And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. "Do not fear," he said. "Am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones." And he comforted them, and he spoke kindly to their hearts. Joseph lived 110 years. He saw the third generation of his sons. Before he died, he said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob." He made them swear an oath to carry his bones up from Egypt when that day had come. Then Joseph died. They embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. He had been the favored son, the dreamer, the slave, the prisoner, the ruler. He had known the pit, the false accusation, the long forgetting, and the sudden rising. Through every season, the Lord was with him. And what others meant for evil, God meant for good. In Joseph, we see a shadow of a greater son still to come, the beloved one, rejected by his brothers, sold for silver, falsely accused, yet raised to the highest place from which he would preserve life for many and speak forgiveness to those who had wronged him. This is the story of Joseph, the dreamer who became a savior in Egypt, the brother who forgave, the man through whom God kept the promise alive when death pressed close on every side. This is Dust to Glory. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. Bye for now.
Three, two, one, talk to me.